Yes, my name's Luke Lucas. I'm a freelance creative, originally from Melbourne. The creative industry can be quite stressful. You're often presented with really tough timelines and some big expectations, and if you don't meet those expectations, you quite often don't get paid. So I have a few strategies that I use to try to deal with stress. Stress is kind of an enemy of creative thinking, in my opinion, so these things are really important. This is a bit of a cliche quote for these kind of conferences, but it's true. I really love what I do, and I'm really passionate about what I do, and I don't, even if I'm working sort of a 16-hour day, I'll do it with a smile on my face because it's something that I really want to be doing. And what I do is create types for all types of people, and concept-driven type, and by that I mean there's generally an idea behind the treatment of the lettering that I'll create, and the way that I treat the lettering is in order to try and express an idea or a character or a quality or a tone or an emotion. When I get the chance to, I like to do work for exhibitions as well. I think it's important as a creative to have an outlet that doesn't have any commercial interests. It allows you to be kind of pure in your creative approach to something. So whenever I get the opportunity to, I like to do exhibition work. So this is what I believe is key to being a happy creative. And like I was saying before, if all I did was magazine work, I'd be quite creatively fulfilled, but I wouldn't be able to pay the bills. And if all I did was advertising work, I might be cashed up, but I'd be creatively starved. So when I finished high school, I tried to get into various, I didn't actually know what creative field I wanted to get into, and I tried to get into industrial design at RMIT and graphic design, and I got knocked back a couple of years in a row, didn't ever make it, but I finally decided to do a course called an Associate Diploma in Computer-Aided Art and Design at a school called Melbourne School of Art, neither of which are around these days. I don't think the course doesn't exist. This is my mate Jamie, who studied with me as well, and about halfway through that first year of that course, we decided we'd start a magazine, which was 4 in a row. And yeah, it was absolute rubbish from a design perspective, but it was an awesome experience. We started that. From there, Jamie and I hooked up with another guy, Dion, and we formed a business called Life Lounge, which was an online business. It was a website for action sports. And that was at around the time where there was a lot of hype around the internet. And a few years later, there was what was known as the dot-com crash, or the bubble burst in the dot-com industry, and we were kind of forced with a dilemma. We could either shut the door and move on, or we could try and make it work somehow. And what we found was that we had an audience that was interested in what we were saying through our website, and we formed an agency called Life Lounge in 2001 as a means to stay afloat. And we were using the money that we're earning from our client services to help fund the website to keep that alive. A few years later, we started a magazine, and that was a similar kind of scenario. We'd work on our client stuff during the day, and then we'd work on the magazine in the evening. And it was through the magazine that I really started to experiment with type. And then a few years later, I'd realised I didn't actually have a folio or as such. I didn't have anywhere where my work was, where I could show people my work. So I decided to put some stuff up on Behance. I didn't really know much about it. I didn't understand how social media worked, but I thought it might be a good way to get some work up online, and rather than going to the trouble of building a website. So I did that, and it was literally weeks later that I started receiving inquiries, and people would see work that I'd done in the magazine and were asking me to do commercial things that related to that. So here's an example of something that I did in the magazine, issue 10 of the magazine, and in a font that I created, and they asked me to do something in a similar kind of typeface, in a similar kind of colour palette, but were willing to pay me to do that as well. My process kind of looks like this. I'll get a brief. Sometimes it can be 20 pages of words, and sometimes it could be a bunch of pictures. This is a really simple brief I received from Nike for a t-shirt graphic. And I generally start off with, this is related to something else actually, but I generally start off with some really loose hand sketches, personally, so I can understand how composition's working, where I'm going to take the type tonally, and then I'll start to refine it in a sort of vector form. I'll digitize it and refine and critique my work till I get it to a point where it's a sort of resolved vector draft. And that's the kind of thing that I'd send through to a client for approval or for feedback. This was a job for Toyota in the States. Yeah, I think that got killed at that point. It didn't go any further. But sometimes the client will say, I like what you've done there, but can you make it a bit heavier, or can you change this or that? So there's generally a bit of back and forth until the clients are happy with the draft, and then I'll take that to the next level, which might be something like this. The better you know your tools, the more effective you can be at your job. And because, I guess, being a creative, a lot of our tools are technology-based, and technology is moving quite fast, I think you really need to be hungry to learn to stay on top of the latest tools available. And it's really good to be selective. The work that you do defines the work that you will attract. So just as saying yes to the right jobs is important, saying no can be a really positive thing as well. I don't necessarily have to say yes or no to all of these. Well, they're all things that I take into consideration. Will I enjoy the work? We spend so much of our time working, and if you're not enjoying it, that's really quite a sad existence. We have a choice. Will it be good for my folio? The work that I put in my folio is what attracts more work, and if a job's not going to be good for my folio, then it's really not serving any purpose other than maybe giving me some money. So yeah, thanks for your time.